Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 7 of the Godzilla Roundtable. Today, as always, I am joined by.
It's on you once again.
Crash as well.
And today, I'm happy to be joined by our second and third guests, respectively, Eric and Alec from Monsters vs. Men, which is where I made my first Godzilla podcast debut, actually, for a King of the Monsters episode. Bonus
Yeah.
episode.
Wow, I didn't realize that was your first appearance.
Yeah, that was.
You did
I was
you
on
did a great
Google's
job.
cast before. Thanks. And basically, as always, to start us off with any guests I have on, how did you guys get into Godzilla? Though I know Eric's journey into Godzilla has been recorded.
Yes. Well, Alex, why don't you start?
Yeah, so I've been watching Godzilla films since as long as I can remember. I would imagine that, like most kids, that my journey started with dinosaurs and very quickly evolved, or mutated in Godzilla's case, into Godzilla films. And since then, I've just been enamored with it. I used to have the VHSs of Megalon, the original King of the Monsters version of Gojira, and Terror of Mechagodzilla, and of course, I guess Revenge of Godzilla, I guess is what it's called, or Godzilla's Revenge. And that was the one that I ignored mostly as a child, and I still choose to do so. No, Eric, what about you? I mean, I think I heard you're new to this.
Yes. Well, I am the Crash of Monsters vs. Men, right? So Alex drugged me on this journey with him as we made our way through all of the Godzilla films. I have been a Godzilla fan for less than a year. It's coming up on a year at this point, but I've been a Godzilla fan for less than a year. But as Alex likes to tell people, I've become the bigger nerd throughout this process. So, like, I'm like watching, Champions Festival cuts and telling Alex about it, and really diving deep into Ultraman. And Alex is like, "What are you doing, man? You've become like the biggest nerd of all time." I'm like, I'm just loving it. I'm loving it.
Yeah.
And I also managed to get you into anime because you asked me, which Urobuchi anime should I watch before the anime trilogy?
Yeah.
So you've really gotten immersed into nerd culture.
Absolutely.
Also, because once again, on a guest episode, I fucking forgot to say my name. Hello, as always, this is Faye Mulder. And because I forgot to say the damn movie we're doing, this is Ebra Horror of the Deep, otherwise known as Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster.
Yes. No, Faye, you're absolutely right. You also turned me on to Fate Zero, so I appreciate that recommendation. Quite the recommendation. Recommendations are like my love language. So if someone recommends something to me, I have an obligation to go watch it or go read it.
That's so not true. I was trying to get him into anime for a long time, and he got into it for a little while, but for reasons we can't really go into, he stopped. And then he wouldn't listen to me. And then you drop like one recommendation, and sudden he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm about to wrap up Fate Zero." Yeah.
Oh my god.
So I'm
Yeah.
not a fan.
I generally, it was just like, because it was just on one of David Kaiju Apostle's things.
Mm-hmm.
Something about the anime trilogy, and I was like, I think if people watched like Urobuchi stuff first, people would like it a lot more. So I just like, hey, Eric, before you do these, I think you should watch like one of his shows first. And then it just happened. I was like, oh, okay, wow.
Wow. That's all it took. That's
Yeah.
all it took. This has been the most insulting podcast I've ever been on.
I just like Faye more than you, Alex. I'm sorry.
Fair enough. I can't really blame you.
Oh my god. Alright, let me get this back on topic before we keep talking about anime. So as always, we rate the movie first. So what would everybody here rate Ebirah Horror of the Deep?
Who's first?
You can go first, Crash. I'll let you go.
I'd probably give it a 7 out of 10. I liked it a lot,
Okay.
but I kind of felt
Mhm.
it was on the weaker end, personally.
Mhm.
But it was a lot of fun to watch.
Okay. How about you, Ton?
Yeah, I'm gonna crash. I rated it 4 stars on Butterbox, but it's probably more of a 7.5 out of 10. I liked it
Mhm.
a lot, actually. Just probably not the strongest film movie, but it's still a solid movie.
Okay. And now for our guess.
For me, on a Mars show, I gave it a 3 out of 5, and now for me, it's gonna be a 7 out of 10. And I don't know if it's because I'm coming off camera, or it's one of those movies where every time I think about it, I like it more. And for me, it's a 7 out of 10 now.
Yeah, man, we're on the same page here, Alex, which somehow surprisingly seems to happen a lot. But I'm giving it a 7 out of 10 as well. I originally rated it a 3 out of 5 on our podcast, but I rewatched it a couple times this week, and this is a movie that just gets more and more fun each time you rewatch it. The characters are lovable, which I'm sure we'll get into. The effects, though not always my favorite, are serviceable, really serviceable. And I like Fukuda's style and direction that he's taking this series in. As his first entry, I think it's a really solid first entry for Jun Fukuda.
That is true. That's a perspective I did not think about. Mulder was telling me that. Yeah, this is kind of
Yeah.
started a new era, or like technically. With a
Yeah, it
new
is.
director in
It's basically...
Yeah, so I can really the thing with that mindset. I guess I can be a little more forgiving because it is very unique for that. It's very different than the last few ones I've seen.
See, for me, I'd also second basically everyone's opinion. For me, it's a solid 7 out of 10. It's good and it's really fun, but I don't think it's Fukuda's height, per se. And yeah, Crash, I would agree. This is kind of an early start to the 70s kind of Godzilla stuff, I feel like.
Yeah.
It's kind of like an in-between era of it.
Yeah.
Which I guess brings us to our first topic. How does everybody feel about the more lighter tone seen in Ebirah Horror of the Deep compared to stuff like, say, like Ghidorah or Astro Monster, or even King Kong vs. Godzilla, which despite being pretty comedic, I'd say is overall a bit more serious in tone than Ebirah.
It caught me off guard. I was a little... Yeah. it was fun though. I liked it. It's nice to see something fresh when you have a series like this on for a long time. I think it really delivered on that. Because it was kind of like, you're telling me it was made for a teen audience, sort of. And,
Yeah, it
with
was.
the younger characters and stuff, the corn and it's kind of, I guess, weird. But yeah, it's I like it. I like the lighter tone.
Yeah.
What do you think, Ton?
Yeah, the tone, so let's see what it was. Or not listening, but tone, overall, I liked it. It's a lighter tone, but I felt like it still kind of had that in-depth, kind of right.
The Mysterious Island from Ray Harryhausen.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. The tone is... It caught me off guard when we went through this series the first time, because it really... I mean, other than King Kong vs. Godzilla, it really kind of feels a little off. But going back now, I really appreciate it. And Eric kind of mentioned it earlier, but the more I watch this movie, the more jokes and like humor, and the more willing to go along on the ride I am with this movie. It's a really fun one, and I'm all in on it now, much more so than it used to be.
I think there are two things that make the tone work, really. One, it's the island adventure setting, right? Like that automatically lends itself to this lighter feel and this lighter tone. Now, it is kind of serious that they stumble upon a nuclear bomb facility, but the island adventure theme kind of starts from the beginning with this tale of this Scooby-Doo type gang getting into trouble by finding themselves out at sea, right? But the characters also, it's just the characters have a lightness to them, especially like our two side characters. Genta is my favorite of the side characters. He's the one who has the seizure on the dance floor, and then later he's the one that wants to help out the infant islanders the most and finally uses his brain to come up with a solution. Genta's such a fun character. And of course, Akira Takarada, his role here is so different than many of his other roles, but he sells it, and he also brings that fun to this tone, I think.
Yeah, see, for me, with the lighthearted tone, I think it works to kind of because something I've been kind of noticing. I know this probably wasn't on purpose, but with the Showa stuff, for like I'd say the first 9 movies, the odd numbered movies are the ones that are like more serious up until this point because this is movie number 7, but this is the one which kind of breaks the trend, and this is like one of the lighter hearted ones. I don't know if that was intentional, but it just happened. I think it's interesting. But yeah, I think the lighthearted tone works because it adds something new to the franchise. I feel like especially after Astro Monster, which is such a serious movie, despite the moments of levity, I, I think it makes the franchise feel fresh. And I also think that at the time, because just to bring in some history, at this point in the '60s, the television industry in Japan was starting to quickly outpace the film industry,
Right.
and they kind of had to find new ways to bring in people. So of course with Ebirah, you have them trying to bring in the teenage audience, which is why there's such a focus on like dancing and the more like funky music,
Yeah, Godzilla was totally too
musical
real.
score.
Yeah.
And you have like the more like the fun plot. Like it definitely does feel like a Scooby Doo gang.
Yeah.
And then you have a bit more of a, let's just say, fan service element to this movie compared to prior ones.
And yeah,
Mhm.
the
And
villains were kind of, I guess, not comical, but kind of how evil they were. Kind of funny.
yeah, they're a lot more supervillain
Yes.
than kind of the more gray prior villains
Yeah.
of the prior
I
movies,
mean,
who are feel a bit more realistic and
we got
grounded.
Sarah's too. That really caught me off guard.
Which I guess something else I'll mention. There's a lot of returning actors in this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you have Akira Takarada back as the bank robber who they just happened to steal the boat he was in, which I love. Just a coincidence of that. Then you have Kumi Mizuno back as Dio, the Infant Islander main character of the film. And then you have, oh shoot, I'm gonna get dragged for this. Oh, what is Serizawa's actor's name?
Your career's over.
Is it Akihiko Harada?
That's it. Thank you, Eric. You saved my ass there. Akihito Harada's back for the first time, I think. I don't remember him coming
I
back
thought it was
before this.
like he had to have
Yeah.
an eye patch again. That's what it
Yeah, that's really funny. He has the eye patch again, but this time he's villainous.
He got amnesia.
Is it
Which is
only
why
his
he
died
other
from the
eye
bomb.
this time?
He didn't die to the hydrogen bomb. He's got amnesia. And he became a super villain.
Actually, Crash, it was the oxygen destroyer.
My bad.
But yeah, it's like really funny because that's why Crash, you're joking that it was Serizawa's evil twin.
I was just so surprised. I mean, it's been a while since Gojira, so like, I was like, oh my gosh, he's back.
Yeah.
And he looks the same. It's really funny.
So yeah, so it's really fun to have those returning actors come back and spot them even if they're playing different roles. And speaking of returning actors, there's something behind the scenes that I think is really interesting with Ebirah. Like I was telling you, Crash and Ton. And I'm sure Eric and Alex already know this, but this movie started life as a King Kong film.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was not originally a Godzilla film, which is why you have some weirdness, like Godzilla not being hurt by electricity initially, and you also have him being infatuated with a human woman, which was not part of his character before this.
So odd. So odd.
It's odd, but it kind of works, and overall, I feel like they managed to do a good job of making this feel like a Godzilla movie, not a King Kong movie.
Yeah.
They managed to make it work just enough, but there still was those really weird moments, like him being so infatuated with Dio.
Yeah. I mean, it also plays with the King Kong element of just everything being a gigantic version of a normal thing, which is like we get
Yeah.
the giant condor, we get a giant.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
Yeah, Condor was really fun.
That is, in my opinion, the funniest moment of the entire show, franchise fight wise, because it's just so comical. It just comes out of nowhere, just starts pecking Godzilla, and then Godzilla just fries it, and that's it. No one even talks about it.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh yeah, that happened.
And they slap that music onto it too when he starts
Yeah.
attacking.
Yeah,
Yeah, there were a lot of moments like that. It was really funny.
Yeah.
I was
Something
trying to
which I
think.
didn't really. Oh, sorry. Go first,
No, you're
Eric.
good. I was gonna say, I was trying to think of like what is the reason of this moment. This time watching it, and to me, I think it's the start of a shift where Godzilla is becoming a protector in a sense, you
Mm-hmm.
know, um, but it's not necessarily needed because he remains the protector after he fights the Condor
Yeah.
and he fights the fighter jets. So
Yeah.
it's interesting. It marks that shift, I think, but it
Mm-hmm.
is funny. I like the moment just because of how off the wall it is.
It is. And I guess something interesting there with him becoming a protector, just from a I guess quote unquote canonical point of view, I don't think anyone was really trying. It's just interesting though how at this point in time the human character's still like, should we wake up Godzilla? He could destroy
Yeah,
everything.
like
Like we have to balance
I
this
was saying,
out.
his like his ratio is still like 2 to 6. Like he's still not
Yeah.
a good guy yet. Still done more evil than bad. I mean, evil than good.
Yeah.
So their hesitancy is pretty justified.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
More good for the nuclear terrorists.
You're not gonna win either of those.
well, I
Yeah.
like
And
the
I
ending
guess oh so
because of
sorry, go
that.
first, Eric.
Yeah, I was gonna say I just
Yeah.
like the ending, and it marks that shift too. I think
Mm-hmm.
honestly is in that very last scene
Mm-hmm.
where the human characters feel that sympathy towards Godzilla. They want
Yeah.
Godzilla to escape, and it's not necessarily like Godzilla has been a good guy. He's been pretty neutral overall.
Mm-hmm.
He did have that protector moment, but he's not necessarily a good guy at this point. I think that ending where they wish him good luck and they wave
Mm-hmm.
goodbye to him, it really marks that shift in audience expectations, maybe, and also in Jun Fukuda's direction
Yeah.
overall and the way that he takes the series moving forward.
Yeah, I think
I
you're
would
right. My favorite moment at the end was when they're telling him like, "Jump, Godzilla, jump!" Like they realize that
Yeah.
he really is just like this
yeah.
monster and has like no. He's just completely ambivalent. And
Yeah.
I think you're right, Eric. That is like when the that is the moment this entire franchise shifts Godzilla.
It does. The funniest thing is though is with the go
Oh,
first, Crash, because it's tied to
yeah, I was
you.
gonna say that. So one of my favorite tropes I've noticed so far with Godzilla is every now and then monsters will just jump off the fucking cliff and into the water. I guess that's one of my favorite moments of that because he gets himself prepared. It's like a little wiggle. And he jumps off the cliff, and I was so happy. I love seeing that in these movies. That's the top line. Godzilla cliff jump moment.
And you also Crash got you Godzilla
Oh
Mountain Peak
yes, of
back because
course.
it's been a while.
You'll see later podcasts, but I've noticed some things like sometimes every now and then as well. Godzilla or the monsters just like peek their head over a cliff and just kind of look over, just overseeing
hmm
everybody. It always makes me laugh.
Which I guess to get into Jun Fukuda, 'cause I think Jun Fukuda is possibly the most fascinating Godzilla director besides Yoshimitsu Banno personally, because I don't know if everyone knows this, but Jun Fukuda hated his Godzilla movies.
hmm
Yeah, when he got asked in the '90s about them, he was like, "They were old trash. There should have been no Godzilla sequels."
Wow.
He hated them. Like Honda, you could tell Honda had some mixed feelings on some elements of them, but he overall was pretty fond of them. Fukuda flat out said there should have been no sequels, and he said his movies were awful.
Why is he good
Man,
on
which I totally don't agree with.
I don't agree with either, but I just think it's so interesting.
It is.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's because of if he saw God, because I think that a kind of big misconception is that only America took Godzilla as a joke. Because Japan also, it's people act like Japan was not in on the fact that these movies were goofy. They totally were, especially the later ones, and this even hit the original one to a degree. And I'm not sure if that influenced Fukuda being like, yeah, I kind of fucked it up. In my opinion, he did not at all. But I'm just not sure if he because he constantly got the derision that they had that affected his viewpoint. But it certainly is interesting that he was not positive on these films, in
Yeah.
my opinion.
Mm, yeah.
Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
It's, it's not the same as feel like steps it's really expanded. And I feel like he still made an effort to like take trips this well.
Same.
That has a great effect too. It holds up really well. Looks
Yeah,
really
it looks
nice.
amazing.
It almost reminds me of the intro Pacific.
Oh
yeah.
I feel like, whoa. I don't want to see football. I feel like that might.
Oh, could be. I mean, Del Toro's a huge Godzilla fan too.
He is.
That moment, that moment in particular is actually my favorite Ebra moment, which
Same.
is I know it stinks because we see more of him later on, but it's kind of that Jaws effect, right? You hold back a little bit, and you just show us a piece, and that piece is more terrifying than the whole. And I think that's exactly what we get in that initial scene. It also helps that it's at night and it's storming, right?
Yeah, which is this great atmosphere.
Yeah, it is. It's terrifying. But sticking with Fukuda for a second, it is a shame that he looks back on these films and doesn't see them for what I see them and what most fans see them as, which are really just fun, lighthearted, rewatchable films. I put a poll on Twitter, you might have seen this, Faye, about which films do you feel like are the most rewatchable? And, Showa Films had 50%.
They won by a landslide.
Yeah, and I think the reason for that, it comes down to the characters and just the way that they interact with each other. You grow familiar with these characters. They're fun. You can just turn on Ebra, Horror of the Deep. You don't have to pay a ton of attention to really have a great time with the movie on a lazy Sunday afternoon, right? And I think Fukuda is missing out on, or maybe not missing out, but he's overlooking the fun aspect that he brought to this franchise, which I think is a shame.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
See, like, sorry, Alex, go first, then I'll say what I have to say.
No, you're good. I was just gonna say I completely agree, Eric, and I think this is a top 3 Fukuda film, at least in the Godzilla franchise. I mean, he brings the fun here. Now, I do think that something like Terror of Mechagodzilla, or not Terror, but Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla is probably his finest Godzilla work, but he brings the fun, and he brings something unique. Now, I totally understand, maybe from his point of view, that he had a studio just kind of telling him what to do, essentially, and just they turned them into the B team at this point. And I can't imagine that, at least ego-wise, that didn't probably feel very good.
Yeah, because that is one thing with this. Like I told you guys last time, Tunnel Crash, on our last episode, this was the end of the golden era, per se, where you had Honda, Tsuburaya, Tanaka, and Ifukube as, like, the A team. Fukuda, unfortunately, like Alex is saying, was very clearly used as the B team. Oh shoot, who was E.G. Tsuburai's protege who did Fukuda's films?
Ooh, I can't remember.
Because Tsuburaya did not do these films. He had his protege come in and do them. So I can also imagine that must have felt like a slap in the face that Tsuburaya did not involve himself in Fukuda's films.
Yeah, and I think the studio explicitly said to him that they brought him on because he could work on a TV show budget.
Yeah.
Oof.
And they took advantage of that later with Zone Spider, where they had him be the showrunner for that. And he hated that even more than his Showa Godzilla films. Because he was like, when the interviewer brought up Zone Spider, he was like, don't even talk to me about that show.
Really?
He said he liked his sci-fi films that weren't tied to kaiju.
Interesting. Oh.
Yeah. It's a shame, and unfortunately, because he passed away, I believe, in 2000, he never really got to see his Godzilla films get reevaluated.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of part of it, because even in the 90s, Honda was still very much looked as not exactly like a Kurosawa, but he had a bit more respect, I feel like. Like Martin Scorsese was a very big admirer of him, for example.
Oh.
And Fukuda, I don't think ever got that. And that's just a shame.
Yeah.
And I think that definitely affected it. Crash, do you have anything to say about Fukuda? I know you just started, so unlike all of us, you don't really have like the rest of his filmography.
Yeah, so no, I don't really have much to say about it, but I could definitely feel this shift in Godzilla so far, and I'm really interested inside to see where it goes, because you can't just do the same thing over and over again. You gotta like expand, do something fresh. So I can really appreciate him for trying to do that with these, even if he doesn't feel so strongly about them anymore, or did. But that's something to admire, at least. Trying to do something different and not just repeat
It
what was
is.
done before.
It is, and oh, sorry, go first, Eric.
I was going to say, speaking of the B team, what did you all think about Sato's score? Because
I loved it.
Yeah,
I love
talk
it so
about
much.
Yeah,
Crash. I know you kind of memed on it a bit, but I'll let Tung go first.
yeah. So I was kind of like surprised.
Yeah.
This sounds like you're watching this, but I feel like really confident. This sequence that they're fighting.
Yeah, that was exactly that's what we laughed at. And the thing is, it's totally intentional. Like they were going for
it is.
So yeah, it was really silly, but it was really funny to watch.
And like what I love about that bit specifically is it looks like Godzilla's dancing.
Yeah,
like it looks like he's dancing to the music.
Like a little dance. That whole jet fight scene hilarious.
And I personally, I have to say, I think this is a great improvement over his Rage Against score personally.
Oh, he did Rage again?
Because, yeah, and I was not huge on that because I felt like that was a very score personally.
Yeah.
I thought it was kind of generic. But this, though, has so much life to it.
Yeah.
And this is what you expect from the composer of Kurosawa's works. Like this is really him, like, bringing his own energy and, like, style to it. And I love it. It really sets it apart from Ifukube's style. And I like having, like, these two opposing styles. Like, Ifukube's more serious orchestral stuff. And then you have Sato's pop culture-y, pop influenced aesthetic in this.
Yeah. I mean, anytime someone can put their own stamp on the music, it's a pretty big sign. But it's like you said, Raids Again, for me, it felt pretty hollow, music-wise as well. And there's definitely an original vibe on this one.
Like I said, I do agree with Eric and Crash and Ton that my favorite moment here is that bit of Godzilla dancing while fighting the jet fighters. It is just, it's fantastic. I love it.
There's so much going on. It was hilarious.
And I guess that brings me to another point I've had in mind. Ebirah Horror of the Deep evidently is not super focused on having a message or a moral.
Well, that was another funny thing that came back in this one too at the end, the last minute moral.
Yeah. But I feel like, though, Crash, unlike King Kong vs. Godzilla, where they kind of try to do it seriously, I think they're kind of making fun of themselves here. Because yeah, I love that bit. Thanks for that, Professor. Like, shut up. This isn't meant to be that serious. The only message I feel like you can kind of take from it is slavery's bad, which honestly, as much as that might sound like hot take, for the time, it being only 21 years after slavery ended in Japan, it actually kind of is a good message. I just don't think the movie is super focused on it, but I'm glad it's there.
Yeah.
Which I guess something else that came to my mind. I'm sorry that I'm jumping to another point. This just hit me too. Do you think the Red Bamboo similarity to Imperial Japan is on purpose, or is it just a coincidence?
Ooh.
I think that's a good question.
Maybe, I didn't even think about it. I almost want to say coincidence, but it is kind of so similar, it's hard to completely dismiss.
Because they're taking over islands, they're using islanders for forced labor, their garb is very Imperial Japan in style. They have that same command system.
Yeah. I would imagine it was probably for a lot of time, at least in the they were based off. When you see this King Kong where you see that scary looking big man, big scary looking. Oh, that's good. Because you know, this is King David.
Oh, they're just flat out
Yeah,
Nazis.
they also have a bit of like imperial Japanese. So
Yeah,
I
they
think,
do because they yell banzai a lot.
yeah, so I think this that kind of, especially with the
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah.
this case.
Hmm.
So I think
I think that's you could be hitting the nail on the head.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Crash and Eric.
I've
Oh,
never
sorry.
I've never thought about it too hard before, but it seems like it would be a tough coincidence to beat, right?
Yeah.
Uh, I think there's something to be said here, not a deep message necessarily, but
Hmm.
we've got the group, our Scooby Doo gang, and they come
Yeah.
to this island, and they really have to kind of navigate two groups of people. They have to navigate the kind of corporation slash terrorist group slash
Hmm.
governmental organization, Red Bamboo, but then they
Hmm.
also have to navigate relationships with um, these natives, right? The
Yeah.
infant island natives, specifically Dio in particular, who they really bring into their fold. And so
Yeah.
I like the way that Fukuda has them interact. And maybe that can get us into some of these characters a little bit. But
Yeah.
I'll tell you, my favorite character, and I think this was in our Showa era showdown, which is like our recap of the Showa era on our podcast. I think my coolest character award went to Akira Takarada's Yoshimura from this film. And
Hmm.
there's something about his character. Have you guys seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
I have seen it.
Wait, there's something about his character in this film that reminds me a little bit of Brad Pitt's character in that film. Like
I
he's
can see it.
yeah, he's a character you don't want to like because
Hmm.
he's kind of sketchy, right? And
Yeah.
in that film, he's really sketchy. But in here, he's kind of sketchy, but you
Hmm.
still just can't help but just think about how cool he is at
Yeah.
all times. And he's kind of bragging about how he can pick any lock. I'm a pro at these things, and he's like that throughout the entire movie. But he's also
Hmm.
lighthearted. Whenever he has the gun at the beginning and he's threatening, the teenagers, it's not a real gun.
Yeah.
And there's just little lighthearted moments like that that make you think like this guy has some layers. This guy has some depth to him.
Yeah,
Hmm.
for sure. He's definitely one of the characters that stood out for me. When you first meet him, he's still on the boat. You gotta really supposed to trust him, but like you go to like him a lot throughout the movie. I feel
Hmm.
he's a lovable character.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting. I feel like they implied that he's non-violent, which I think is interesting. Like the fact that the gun's fake, that he didn't kill anybody, he just stole money, and that even after losing the money, he helps them out.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
It is. I like that Ryota is the one that ends up kidnapping everybody.
I know, right?
He just sails with everybody on board. It's just
Yeah.
he kidnaps what, 3 people?
Yes. I love it. Which I guess, speaking of him, I guess that leads into also the Infinite Islander plot and Mothra as a whole, because Mothra
Yes.
is the very much forgotten element of this
Dancing
film.
to the end.
Yeah. She's just sleeping until the very end of the movie. Then she decides to wake her ass up,
I guess I'll help out. I guess I'll carry all the safety.
which I guess leads into one of my issues with the film. It's not really a big issue, just kind of like, why is this here? Is when Godzilla and Mothra start fighting. It's so random. It's like, oh, didn't you two patch it up like 2 movies ago?
It's so sad to see a friendship fall.
yeah.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
pretty random.
Oh, but you're saying, Ton?
You kind of do feel good because you have the Mafia Alliance. see her in that little kind of scared. So, oh,
Yeah.
hello, friend. I guess she's the poppy flies always. It's such a fun
Stop showing me up. I said, no.
It's odd, and it feels like he was almost pressured to have that moment added in
Yeah.
there because it's completely unnecessary and just inconsequential. It literally leads to nothing new.
Yeah.
Just a scuffle between friends, I suppose.
Yeah, who doesn't try to murder their friend on occasion?
I mean, judging by how you and Eric interact on Twitter, I would think so.
Well, we might be an exception.
Oh man. And I guess though to get onto the bigger topic of the Infinite Islanders, unfortunately, I do have to bring up one elephant in the room. Unlike how they were in Mantra 61 or Mantra versus Godzilla, I'm not sure if it was from budget or what, but unfortunately, they're using brownface in this movie for them. I'm not sure what happened
I
to
did
lead
notice
to
that.
it because
I didn't notice it either.
um basically it's very clear when you look at Kumi Mizuno from this and compared to the movie she was just in.
Mm-hmm.
That's really the big sign of it. I'm not sure what happened because Honda avoided it. I'm not sure if it was budgetary because I do know the budgets got severely slashed for Fukuda's films. So I'm not sure if they were just because you can even tell on Infant Island. First of all, the Peanuts are not back as the fairies. We have a new duo.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, the Bambi.
And not the Peanut. I'm mixing up. Oh no, I am right. I am right.
You were right.
Yeah, I thought you were okay. Never mind. There's too many fairy groups. Yes, the Peanuts are not back. Instead, we have the Bambis, and I think it might have been from a cost-cutting effort because I know the Peanuts were starting to get really big around this time.
Interesting.
So I'm not sure. Oh yeah, go ahead,
the
Eric.
Mothra theme song from our previous films. It just doesn't quite feel the same when they're singing a new song here.
Yeah, I'm glad it gets interrupted the second time by Ryota falling into the middle of it.
Oh, that was amazing. And I really love the coincidence that his brother just happened to end up on Infant Island and not Devil Island.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's so many coincidences in this movie, but it's actually just kind of part of its charm because it just happens nonstop.
And something else I've noticed is they kind of imply it's the work of like divinity. I feel like,
yeah,
because you have the prophet, the fortune teller at the beginning.
I was right.
Yeah, the fortune.
He's right.
The fortune. The fortune teller was right, and then you notice when Ryota drops, they're like, Mantra, give us a sign that you're listening," and then he just fucking drops right after they say it. So I definitely think they're just trying to say like, yeah, Mantra's kind of leading this in some way. I don't know how. How divine Mantra.
Yeah, you also get Dio. There's a couple scenes with her just like praying. You don't hear her praying, but she's like, there's music playing, and you hear her or you see her mouthing words that you can see are clearly prayers. But you were speaking, Faye, of the brown face being one moral component to take a look at, one ethical component to take a look at here. The other thing is, as much as I love Akira Takarada's character, he has this one line that I just found kind of baffling, and it was to Dio when Dio is like checking out some of the military equipment, and she puts this like piece of equipment around her neck, and he says something to her like, "Hey, we don't have time for shopping," or something like that.
Oh yeah.
Do your shopping another time. And it just doesn't really work. That line didn't work for me. I'm like, that's just kind of over generalizing and not really contextually appropriate for an infant islander, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of expected that.
I mean,
but it didn't really come back anyway.
It's very 60s Japan, is what I'll say.
Yeah.
Specifically, Ton and Crash, I guess, but Alex can also put in his opinion. What do you guys think of the brown face of this? Because I know we have we doing a lot of time in our King Kong vs Godzilla episode talking
Oh
about
yeah.
that movie's use of brown face.
Well,
So
King Kong is definitely much more egregious, I feel.
yeah.
But at least here, I mean, Brockface is not good. Don't do that. But I guess at least they weren't portrayed as like savages or like.
Yeah.
It was just kind of
Mm-hmm.
unnecessary, I guess. And in Mothra, they had like red paint, right?
Yeah, but that was more like tribal paint. They weren't like
Yeah. No, I'm just
doing
saying.
any
I
blackface or
wonder
brown
what would
face.
stop them
Yeah.
from just not doing any paint at all. I don't know.
I like I said, the reason why I think it might be budgetary is they may not have had the money to get the extras they had in Monsterverse. So they might have had to just make do with regular Japanese people who not to generalize, but Japanese people tend to be on the paler end of things. Like I know Kumi Mizuno, who's the most obvious example of it, is very pale naturally.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And it's basically it's not malicious, it's
Yeah.
just
It maybe it's a little too
Japan's
but
Japan's a homogeneous country as a whole. So when they see a problem, they're just going to do the easiest solution,
Right.
if that makes sense.
yeah.
But do you have anything to say, Tom?
Yeah. I think Crash is a bit less. It's definitely.
Mm-hmm.
I guess.
I will, but when I saw them, I wasn't sure if they were like spray tan or something. I couldn't tell at first.
Yeah, it almost looks like kind of.
Yeah.
I also noticed this is like.
No, this is the last time they've shown up in the franchise.
Yeah,
Last
so
time.
I wonder. Yeah, so I wonder if like what studio decision something, but
Mm-hmm.
it, like you said, it's kind of unfortunate.
See, mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
See, that is really interesting because I do know Toho has done their own self-censorship about their portrayals of the Ainu and other things. Like, Eric and Alex, I'm not sure if you guys know, and I know Crash and Ton definitely don't. Do you know about Half Human?
Only
talking about it.
slightly about half human.
This was Ishiro Honda's 1955 Yeti film.
Oh no, I haven't seen that one.
Okay, basically, the plot is a Yeti gets discovered in the Japanese Alps, and the Ainu are portrayed in a not flattering way. And because of that, Toho has never officially released it since
Oh.
the VHS
Wow.
days. And this almost happens to Varan as well, because I'm not sure if you guys have seen Varan yet. I think Alex, you probably have. I'm not sure if Eric's gotten to it yet.
No, I haven't seen this.
Varan, his movie also has the Ainu, and they're also not portrayed in the most flattering way. And that movie almost got censored. I'm not sure why it avoided, but Half Human did.
Right.
I will say though that Half Human has a more let's just say problematic portrayal of the Ainu. So I do wonder if Toho is just trying to steer away from native depictions because of that.
Maybe a safe
So
bet.
you might be right, Tom.
Yeah, 2 hours not be racist. Super racist. Yeah, that's definitely I feel not the best, but like,
Yeah, I don't think it is. I do want to clarify that. Even going back to King Kong vs. Godzilla, I think it's a mix of the times and also the culture,
for sure.
where Japan just did not have the okay, to make a bit of a hot take. It's not like how you'd see blackface show up in American films, which is just overt. Come on, what are you doing?
Right.
It's like in Japan, I think it's more ignorance and just not having the cultural background to really recognize what's being done is wrong. I think that's why Toho hasn't censored them the way they have Half Human, which was just
Yeah.
not great.
Well, I think it's like you.
Any,
It's like you say.
oh,
Phil.
go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, it's like you say. Honestly, it's the portrayal of the characters in this one that let me kind of be okay with it more. It
Mm-hmm.
is because in Half Human, I haven't seen it, but if it's more of an egregious characterization and just kind of
Yeah, it's
a
pretty bad, Matthew.
stereotyping, that type of thing can obviously it doesn't look good. Here, we actually get more nuanced characters.
Hmm.
Dio, I like her as a character, and there are other
Same.
characters that are working and show their
Hmm.
like courage and bravery. I don't ever think they're portrayed in a negative light
Yeah, they're
in this
pretty
film. So
positively.
I like them as a character. Of course, looking back, it's definitely problematic, and you have to address
Hmm.
it for what it is. But I do think we can also say that they're portrayed in a positive light here.
I would definitely agree. Like for example, the Infinite Islanders on their own with a bit of probing make the fake powder
Yeah.
for the spray.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
decide to and they basically organize their own escape,
Hmm.
which I think is really good. Like the Infinite Islanders still remain portrayed positively. It's not like King Kong vs Godzilla, where they're not portrayed the best.
Yeah.
But here, though, they're still courageous. They're still strong. Like, and early in the movie, they tried to escape early on Infinite Islanders. It's just that there's a big giant shrimp there
Hmm.
that they can't exactly pass. Which I guess to lead into my last point, Ebirah has not been seen much, and I think it's kind of a shame because I really enjoy him in this movie. I love his action scenes with Godzilla, especially in my opinion the first one where they're doing the rock volleyball,
Oh yes, that's
and
a really funny scene too. They just playing
I
volleyball.
love that bit so much. And also the final bit where they're fighting underwater and Godzilla rips off Ebirah's claws. That's really metal and really cool. And it
Yeah.
kind of reminds me because I will always find some way to bring this movie into the conversation. King of the Monsters when he rips off King Ghidorah's head underwater.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, true, true. I think anything aquatic is pretty cool. Like any aquatic,
It is.
obviously Godzilla comes from water, but he's always fighting. So any
Yeah.
aquatic monster is really cool to see. Hope we get to see more of those kinds. But Bear was cool for what he is. Lobster, shrimp, lobster, dude. Whatever. He's got a club. Whatever.
He's seafood.
Yeah, exactly.
He is.
Seafood monster. But he was cool. I wish he showed up maybe a little more. Because I like seeing it.
Hmm.
But when he did show, it was always cool to see.
Do you guys have any thoughts
Yeah, I
on
think Ebra
Ebirah
is one
or
of the.
Ebirah?
Yeah, I think he is really cool looking. I don't think I don't think the concept of him is very unique or original, but he's done so well that it's not
Yeah.
really a problem. And I'm like you. I really wish we saw him more. And the only time we see him again is in Final Wars.
Oh, you just spoiled it for Crash.
Oh my
Oh
gosh.
no!
When he's going to
Oh,
show
my
up again.
screen's
Oh, no.
ruined.
I'm messing
It's
around.
not really a spoiler, Crash, because what you'll find out in that film is, yeah, it's a wild ride. It's not a huge spoiler, trust me.
Yeah, I'm messing around. Final Wars is a ride.
Oh my
I can't
God.
wait for it.
I'm so
I'll
sorry.
say this
I'll
about
go ahead and
Ebra, though.
exit now. Goodbye, everybody.
I'll say this about Ibra.
Hmm.
The one thing I would change is when he catches the rock between his pinchers. I just wish he would have crushed that rock and pulverized it right there. That would have been so
Yeah.
intimidating and so epic.
Right there. Go ahead.
Ton, do you have anything to say about Ebra?
Yeah, I really like everywhere here. Like I said, all the fights,
Mhm.
especially the underwater fight scenes.
Those are so cool to me.
Yeah.
I love them.
It's really impressive effects, especially.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of personality.
Mhm.
And also he makes me hungry.
I mean, you got the shrimp there, you got like the mustard, like makes you kind of hungry, you know?
He's also the first ever Godzilla kaiju to eat
Oh yeah.
humans in a Godzilla
Yeah,
film.
sorry.
Because Rodan ate people, but he wasn't in a Godzilla film yet.
That's true.
So Ebirah is the first time that humans got eaten in a Godzilla film by a monster,
That's true. That
which I think is kind of neat.
It's really jarring for the rest of the tone of the film.
Yeah.
That's true.
Because he just freaking like stabs them and just eats them with his creepy looking mouth.
It's
Mm-hmm.
really interesting because obviously every other one there's a giant monster that terrorizes people, but here there's a sense of like fear, I guess,
Hmm.
because he's like surrounding the island, you can't get past him, and he kind of
Yeah.
instills that fear in everybody around there, which I think kind of stands out to me. He's like, if you go out there, you're going to die, as opposed to like the
Hmm.
constant threat of like the other monsters, like terrorizing a town or something. His is kind of
Yeah.
more like the creature of the deep, the horror of the deep, being scared
Yeah.
and shit. Like you don't see it, but when he comes out, you're
Hmm.
for bad time.
All right. Before I do closing thoughts, I do want to say something because Crash wanted me to save this for on the episode. Crash, our next movie is Son of Godzilla.
Son of Godzilla. He has a child.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
That's not what I expected.
I'm sorry, Crash.
No. I was just kidding. You're perfectly fine.
No. I'm sorry.
Oh god.
Don't make me fight for Son of Godzilla because that's my favorite Fukuda film.
All I can say is that's I don't know. He's gonna teach someone, child, to protect you. I have no idea what to expect. I just think it's
You're-
really
Your bewilderment will continue throughout the film.
Let me just I just have to post a poster because I just need to have Crash's reaction here on tape to what is coming next.
Oh my gosh, that's perfect. Oh my gosh. Oh. Oh my god, please.
Yes.
Sorry, guys.
Takes that.
Oh my god. But his mom's mantra, we all know this. I think the mantra confirms it.
Jeez, that's gonna be hilarious. You can't do it for
I mean, there was Dracula's daughter, son of Frankenstein. Oh yeah, yeah, there is Son of Kong. That's a second King Kong movie. Yeah. And next time we'll be joined by Brian T. Alexander for that, which will be really fun. But I guess it's time to give our closing remarks on Ebra Horror of the Deep. Alex, do you want to start us off?
Yeah. I think Ebra is a underrated Godzilla movie that, like I said, every time I think about this movie, I like it more. And it's just so much fun, and there's just so much more that I'm catching each time I watch it. Not that it has a lot of thematic depth, but it does have a lot of character depth that I don't think you even pick up on the first go around. And
Yeah.
it's one that I would recommend to probably most people, and it's definitely one of Fukuda's best Godzilla films.
Oh, real quick though, because that reminds me of something, and I'm just gonna make this real quick because I know we're running out of time. This is one of only two Godzilla movies to be on Mystery Science Theater 6000, and I think that's unfortunately tainted its reputation to a degree. Yeah,
This one
Yeah.
didn't deserve it. Megalon,
it did
maybe,
not, in my opinion.
but I love
Yeah, Megalon, I think did, but Ebra, in hindsight, I don't think it deserved it. I think it's not deserving. And if anything, Godzilla Rage Again probably does, in my opinion, personally. But anyways, let me just get back to our closing thoughts. Eric, do you want to give us some closing thoughts on Ebra, Horror of the Deep?
Sure. First off, Crash, I'll be excited to listen to the next episode to get your initial reactions of Son of Godzilla. It's one of those films that was... You thought this film was jarring. Just wait till next week. It's one of those films, though, that over time has grown on me. So I won't speak too harshly about it because I actually do enjoy it. What I'll
I
say,
love
though,
it.
about Ebra and this week is I think Ebra is, to me, Jun Fukuda should be marked by his first and his last film. And I absolutely love Ebra, Horror of the Deep. We've talked a little bit about the tone, and a couple other things that just add to that tone are the colors throughout, right?
Yes.
And it's such a colorful movie, from the red
It is.
bamboo base to the outfits that all the characters wear. and that just adds to this fun tone that is carried throughout the film, whether it's the monster fights or the dialogue between our Scooby-Doo gang. So again, this is one that you can turn on at any time and have a great time with, and it also features one of my favorite images of Godzilla in the entire franchise, and that's when they look down in the cave and they see Godzilla sleeping. I just think it's such a cute image of Godzilla. I really appreciate it.
Cute Godzilla.
All right, Ton, do you want to give us your closing thoughts on Ebra, Heart of the Deep?
Ebirah was just fun. It's definitely different from the I won't be bored. Especially if you have it's a good time.
All right, Crash, do you want to give us your closing thoughts on Ebra, Heart of the Deep?
It was really unique. It was an after to me, and I did really enjoy it, despite what you might have heard of what I said. But yeah, I really liked the island setting was nice. I liked the characters a lot. I liked the humor of it. It made it a lot of fun to watch, and Ebra was cool. So yeah, I really like Ebra Heart of the Deep. Really unique one.
I have to basically fifth at what everyone's saying. I think Ebra Heart of the Deep sadly got a very bad reputation because of the Mystery Science Theater 3000 episode and nothing else. Because when you watch it, it's a good Godzilla movie. I'm not going to be like, oh yeah, this is a masterpiece or anything. But it's a good, fun Godzilla movie just to turn on and watch. And I hate to say this term, because I hate this term, but it's good to turn your brain off and watch it and just enjoy it. And if you do have your brain on, you can look at some things that are there between the lines and kind of think, about... But I don't think it has to be deep. I don't think a movie has to be deep to be good. And I think Ebra set out to be enjoyable, and I think it succeeds at being enjoyable. And like you yourself have said a lot, Alex, a movie's worst offense is being boring. And this movie is not boring at all. It's so fast-paced. There's always something happening. The characters are a lot of fun. The puppetry, in my opinion, is amazing in this film, setting up for how good the puppetry will be in the next film. And it just works. I think it's a great introduction to what the later half of the Showa era would be like more often than not. So I'd recommend it if anyone wants to give the second half of the Showa era a try.
For sure.
All right, before I send everyone off, I'm going to have Alex and Eric do their classic outro before I do my outro.
Well, Eric, you take the lead and botch it like you usually do.
So we end all of our podcast with our signature catchphrase, and that's try to stay alive. And Alex always messes it up. We're supposed to do it in unison, but he always messes it up.
He changes the pacing of it every time.
That was one of your better ones, I must admit.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. This was episode 7 of the Godzilla Roundtable. I am so thankful to have Alex and Eric here, and you guys can find them at...
We are on all your podcasting platforms. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at MVM_pod. You can find us on Patreon, Eric Neely and Alex Cornett, or you can leave us feedback at mvmpod.com.
And I know you can also find Alex on his own Twitter.
Oh yeah, at Al Cornett.
And that was episode 7 of the Godzilla Roundtable. Thank you so much for listening. Next week, like I said, we will have Brian T. Alexander on for Son of Godzilla, and I cannot wait for that. Thank you so much, and good night.
Thanks for having us.
See you around.
Good night.